Hello everyone and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah share. We're holding in Mishnah Berurah Chelik Vav, and in Mirz Hashem we will be learning today Daf Kuf Zayin Amud Aleph. We are continuing to learn Hilchas Sukkah. We pick up today on the top line of the Shulchan Aruch on Daf Kuf Zayin Amud Aleph, Siman Taf Reish Mem Sif Beis. Says the Mechaber, Katan she'enoi tzarech li'imoi, a minor child who does not need his mother. So a young boy who no longer needs to be attended to by his mother on a constant basis. And the Mechaber says, Shehu kiben chamesh kiben sheish. The Mechaber says that this would be a boy who's approximately 5 to 6 years old. Chayiv besukkah midivrei soifrim. This young boy is chayiv in sukkah. He's obligated to eat in the sukkah, not midaraisa, because he's not bar mitzvah. He's chayiv to eat in the sukkah only midivrei soifrim, only as a derabanan. And what is this chiyuv derabanan? Kedei lechanchoi b'mitzvos. This is the chiyuv of chinuch. The father has a chiyuv to be mechanech his son, to be margel him in being mekayim mitzvahs. Once he's 5 or 6 years old, you already start to be margel him and to teach him to be mekayim mitzvahs. You can't just ignore mitzvahs until the boy is 13, and then when he's 13, expect that he's just going to go turn around and stop being mekayim all the mitzvahs. You have to train him. So that's the chiyuv of chinuch. Says the Mishnah Berurah in Ois Katan Dalet, the Mechaber defined this child who already has a chiyuv of chinuch and doesn't need his mother on a constant basis as kiben chamesh kiben sheish, as 5 or 6 years old. So you're giving two different ages. Is it 5 or is it 6? Explains the Mishnah Berurah, kol chad kipum chorfei, each one according to his sharpness. And in Sharatzia and Ois Katan Gimel, the Chavetz Chaim says over here, Vahainu de'ema katan hu charif, if he's a very bright, sharp young boy, shiyuroi ben chamesh umayla, then you already have the mitzvah of the chiyuv of chinuch to train him to be mekayim the mitzvah once he's already 5. Ve'meinenu charif, but if he's not such a bright, sharp child, ben shisha umayla, then from 6 and up. Okay. So that's Mishnah Berurah is Katan Dalet. Let's continue. V'das kama achrayim, and it's the opinion of many achrayim. And over here it brings down the Bach, the Eliyah Rabbah, Bekur Yaakov, Beis Meir, and others. V'das kama achrayim dimi ben chamesh ulamayla, that once a boy is 5 years old, im aviv hu ba'ir, if his father is basically around, she'enoi tzarech oz kol kach l'imoi, a boy who's used to having his father around doesn't need his mother's attention as much. Mechuyev aviv lechanche b'sukkah afilu im einenu charif. So the first opinion over here, the Mishnah Berurah brought down from the Taz and the Magen Avram, said the age of 5 or 6 depends on the brightness of the child. The second sheet over here is saying that it's a question of how much the young boy needs his mother. A young boy who's used to having his father around, so his father tends to him, and he's used to, let's say, going to shul with the father, spending time with the father, and for him to spend time in the sukkah with his father without his mother is not such a stretch. Whereas if you have a child who the father is often away on business and he's always being taken care of by his mother, he's not used to being separated from his mother. That child, you have to wait a little bit longer. If Nebuch, young boy, doesn't have a father, there are those that say that the mother, and there's a chiyuv on Bezdin that has a chiyuv to be mechanech the child. Everybody would agree that you cannot go ahead and give food to a child outside of the sukkah. So if you're in shul and you have some cookies, you can't go ahead and give a 6-year-old cookies to go eat them outside of the sukkah. Well, I guess it depends if the cookies are chayiv in sukkah or not. If you have ma'at yoser mikabeh, it would be pasabah b'kisnin. So if it's more than the volume of an egg, it's already a chiyuv of sukkah. You can't go ahead and be meichel biyodayim to a 5 or 6 year old something that is chayiv in sukkah that he's going to eat outside the sukkah, and that's afilu la'adam acher, and that's not even only on the father. Like this, when it comes to a chiyuv of chinuch, the chiyuv of chinuch is on the father. The chiyuv of chinuch is not on a stranger. But for a stranger to be Michael the Katan Biyadayim, that he's not allowed to do outside of the sukkah. Now the Mishnah Berurah, the Chavetz Chaim, explains, what do I mean when I say to be Michael him Biyadayim? Dahainu litein l'soich piv, either to put it in his mouth, or to tell him, go eat. Less than that is not really being Michael him Biyadayim. So you have some cookies out, and the kid comes and takes a cookie, that's not called being Michael him Biyadayim. You're not mechuyev to stop him. But you can't go give him a cookie and say, here, go ahead, eat it. You can't do that. You can't tell him to eat it outside of the sukkah. Sif Gimel, second line down in the Shulchan Aruch, says the Mechaber, Cholim, ill people, u'mishamshehen, and those that are tending to the needs of the ill individuals, Peturim min hasukah, those people are potter min hasukah. Why are they potter min hasukah? So, Eis Katan Vav, the Mishnah Berurah says, Cholim, why are ill individuals potter from sukkah? Mishum diksiv teishvu ke'ein taduru. Because like we've said already so many times, the chiyuv of sukkah is teishvu ke'ein taduru. You're supposed to be using the sukkah and living in the sukkah in the manner in which you would live in your house. If somebody was ill, it was not sukkahs. If somebody was ill in the middle of the winter or in the middle of the summer, he wouldn't bedafka stay in his house if it would be easier for him somewhere else and more comfortable somewhere else. If the person would have somewhere else to go where somehow it would improve his quality of life, where he would be more comfortable in his illness in that other place, he would go there. He wouldn't bedafka stay in his house. So too when it comes to sukkah. If somebody, Nebuchadnezzar, is ill, and in the sukkah he's uncomfortable, but in the house he's more comfortable inside the house and it's easier for him, then he's allowed to leave the sukkah and go to the house, because that is teishvu ke'ein taduru. So that's why the chayla is potter from sukkah. The chayla is potter from sukkah because the chiyuv of sukkah is teishvu ke'ein taduru. And you would leave your house if you're ill and you're more comfortable somewhere else. So you could leave the sukkah if you're ill and you're more comfortable somewhere else. Then the Mechaber told us not only is the chayla potter in sukkah, but mishamshehen peturin min hasukkah. Those who are tending to the ill individuals are also potter min hasukkah. Why are they potter min hasukkah? So the Mishnah Berurah in Eis Katan Zayin says, you know why they're potter? Lefi shehein oiskin b'mitzvah. Because these people who are taking care of an ill individual, they're being oisik b'mitzvah. It's a mitzvah to help a sick person. It's a mitzvah to help out an ill individual. And we know the golden rule, v'chala oisik b'mitzvah potter min ha-mitzvah. You're doing a mitzvah while you're tending to the needs of the sick person. You're being oisik b'mitzvah. Oisik b'mitzvah potter min ha-mitzvah. You're not mechuyev to go do another mitzvah while you're busy doing that mitzvah. Okay, so far we have here in the Mechaber, the sick person, those who are helping the sick people, they're both potter from sukkah. The chayli is potter from sukkah because of teishvu ke'ein taduru. The attendants are potter min hasukkah, says the Mishnah Berurah. Why? Because kala oisik b'mitzvah, potter min ha-mitzvah. Now let's go back to the Mechaber. When the Mechaber continues 3 lines down near the beginning of the line, and he says, "V'loy chayla sheyesh by sakana." We're not bedafka speaking here about a chayla sheyesh by sakana. It's not only a chayla who might chas v'chalila be in danger, who's potter min hasukkah, and whose attendants are potter min hasukkah. Ela afilu chash beroishai, even if somebody has a bad headache, ay chash be'einav, or somehow his eyes are bothering him badly, he's also potter min hasukkah. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Eis Katan Ches, Ela afilu chash, Kitzer b'lashaynai. The Mishnah Berurah says that the Mechaber was using kind of an abridged language over here. Uva Gemara Isa, this comes from a Gemara and Daf Chavav Amud Aleph in Sukkah. The Gemara's text is Afilu chayla she'ein by sakana, even a chayla she'ein by sakana, v'afilu chash b'roishai, ay chash be'einav. And Eis Katan Test, the Mishnah Berurah points out, why is the person with a headache potter min hasukkah? Why is he potter min hasukkah if he has a problem with his eyes? Says the Mishnah Berurah in Eis Katan Test, Ritzaynai loymar. Obviously, what the Mechaber wants to say is he's potter from sukkah if the yeshivas hasukkah kashaloi. If somehow sitting in the sukkah is making him feel worse, or even if it's not necessarily making him feel worse, But if it's taxing on him and it's uncomfortable to sit in the sukkah, and if he would go into the house and lay down on the couch, or he would go into the house and go up to his bed, he would feel better. He's patur min sukkah. That's again, it's the patur of teishvu ke'ein taduru. You would leave your house if it would make you more comfortable. You could leave the sukkah if it's going to make you more comfortable if you are chas v'chalila a chayla. Okay, continues the Mechaber, 3 lines down near the end of the line, and here we get a little bit complicated. Says the Mechaber, I told you so far that a chayla, an ill person, and those who are tending to the ill people, misham shehem, they're patur min sukkah. And we have seen that the chayla is patur min sukkah because of teishu kein taduru, and the misham shehem, the attendants, are patur min sukkah because of kala oisik b'mitzvah patur min mitzvah. Now, says the Mechaber, v'yesh mi she'omer, there is one who says, she'ein ha'mishamshim piturim, that the ones that are tending to the needs of the chayla are only pater, ella, they're only pater, b'shah she'ha'chayla tzarech lehem, at the time that the chayla needs them. But if the chayla doesn't need them right now, if right now, let's say there's somebody else to tend to the needs of the chayla, or right now the chayla is sleeping, and the chayla says the chayla doesn't need anybody right now, then the chayla is chayev in sukkah. And the Mechaber says this as a yesh mi she'omer. There is one that says that the mishamshim are only pater when the chayla needs them. But when the chayla does not need them, then they're not pater. And then if they want to eat something that's chayiv in sukkah, they have to go to the sukkah. If they want to sit down and learn for 15 minutes, they got to go to the sukkah. And again, it's a yesh mi she'omer. And if you look at the Be'er HaGoyla, Ois Katan Zayin, the Be'er HaGoyla brings this down from the Archas Chayim. And if you look in the Beis Yosef, you'll see that the Mechaber pulled this, he quotes it from an Archas Chayim. Now, let's take a look here at the Mishnah Berurah. The Mishnah Berurah says over here in Ois Katan Yud, B'shah she'achayla, when are the misham shehem peturim? When are the ones tending to the needs of the sick people pater? Only when the chayla needs them, says the Mishnah Berurah. V'em yesh shnei mishamshin. Let's say there are two people that are helping out the chayla, and they're taking turns. V'ein tzarich l'shteim b'basachas. The chayla doesn't need 2 people right now. Right now, the chayla needs 1 person in his room, sitting next to his bedside, paying attention to him. He doesn't need a second person. They might need a second person if they have to move the chayla on the bed, or they have to get the chayla up and put the chayla in a chair. So fine. So then the one that's on shift right now will go get the other one. But right now, we have Ruvain and Shimon. Ruvain is paying attention to the ill individual. Shimon could be off. So Shimon wants to go eat a sandwich, go into the sukkah. So that's what the Mishnah Berurah says. V'im yesh shnei mishamshim ve'in tzarich l'shteim b'basachas tzarich lecha echad b'sukkah. So then the one who's off has to eat in the sukkah be'esh shibushay shalasheni, when the second one is doing the work. Ois Katan Yud Aleph tzarich lehem ve'im uchayla sheyesh by sakana. If we're dealing with a chayla sheyesh by sakana, then the Mishnah Berurah says, and he brings this down from El Yerabah, the Big Day Yesha, nira deyesh lahakel gam b'shah she'enoi tzarich lei. When you're dealing with a chayla sheyesh by sakana, then the Mishnah Berurah says you could be mekel even when the chayla doesn't need this person right now. You're dealing with a chayla sheyesh by sakana. When you're dealing with a chayla sheyesh by sakana, the misham shehem have to have the chayla on their mind on a constant basis. You always have to check on him. You always have to see if there's anything going on. So in that case, the Chavetz Chaim says you could certainly be mekel. But now let's go back to the thrust of what the Mechaber says, which seems to be very, very difficult. The Mechaber gave us what seems to be over here 2 different days. We have one opinion that says chayla, an ill individual, umisham sheim, are pater min sukkah. The ones that are tending to the needs of the chayla are pater from sukkah, and the Mishnah Berurah told us it's because Isaac b'mitzvah pater min mitzvah. Then he brings us a yesh mi she'omer. He quotes from the Archas Chaim that there are those that say that the patur is only when the chayla needs the attendant. But when the mechayla does not need the attendant, then this yesh mi she'omer says that the attendant is chayev in sukkah. And the Mishnah Berurah gave me an example. You have 2 attendants. One is on duty, one is off duty. The one who's off duty should eat his tuna sandwich in the sukkah. But again, from the Mechaber, this seems to be only the opinion of a yesh mi she'omer. Question is, if the p'tur over here is a p'tur of Isaac b'mitzvah, pater min mitzvah, what on earth is the logic of the day of Rishona? What's the logic of the first opinion? Now, the first opinion this is just brought over here. If you look in the Berurah, this is a beferish Mishnah, Sukkah Daf Chafei Amud Aleph. So the Mishnah does not make this differentiation. So what would be the logic of this seemingly Dei Rishona who holds that there's a p'tur on the attendant even if the chayil does not need him? If the chayil does not need him right now, he's not being Isaac b'mitzvah. Why is he pater ben mitzvah? Now the truth is that if you look in the Eliyah Rabbah, it seems that the Eliyah Rabbah was bothered by this kasha, because the Eliyah Rabbah, I could read to you his lashon. The Eliyah Rabbah says like this. He tells us, Kain Kosev bebeis Yosef. Indeed, this is what the Mechaber says in the Beis Yosef, B'Shem Archas Chaim, V'chein Kosev HaKolboi, and the Kolboi also writes about this Yesh Misha Omer, but the Eliyah Rabbah says, Ve'efsher Dekulei Alma Moedim Bazeh. It's very possible that nobody disagrees with this Yesh Misha Omer. And everybody agrees that when the Chayla doesn't need the attendant is Chayiv in Sukkah. And it seems that the Eliyah Rabbah could not find anybody who argues on this. So the Eliyah Rabbah is saying, even though the Mechaber says Yesh Misha Omer, it's not really a Yesh Misha Omer. Everybody agrees that this is the case because that's what the logic would seem to dictate. Now the problem is, how do you explain the Mechaber? Why then did the Mechaber write this as a Yesh Misha Omer? So the truth is that there are many who are bothered by this kasha. I'm going to turn to the Aruch HaShulchan over here. The Aruch HaShulchan says like this: V'hatam de mishamshav peturim. Why are the mishamshim potter? Now I read to you the Mishnah Berurah. The Mishnah Berurah says that the reason the mishamshim are potter is because of a Isaac b'mitzvah potter min mitzvah. Says the Aruch HaShulchan, Yesh oimrim mitam da Isaac b'mitzvah potter min mitzvah. Yes, the Lavush and the Graz, they say that the p'tur is Isaac b'mitzvah potter min mitzvah. But the Aruch HaShulchan says, I have a big problem with that. I'm not ready to agree that the p'tur of mishamshim is als Isaac b'mitzvah potter min mitzvah. Says the Aruch HaShulchan v'loy nehirali. This does not seem right to me. Dahatenach ba'iseh bechinam mishum mitzvah. That's true if the reason the attendants are tending to the needs of the chayla is because they're volunteers, they're doing it for nothing, and they're doing it because it's a mitzvah. Then we apply the rule of Isaac b'mitzvah pater min mitzvah. Avalam oisa b'schar, but if it's a nurse who's doing his or her job, and they're getting paid to do the job, then chayiv. Then there is no p'tur of Isaac b'mitzvah pater min mitzvah. Now why that's true is a whole different conversation, but that does seem to be the rule, that Isaac b'mitzvah pater min mitzvah doesn't apply when you're doing something for schar. It's actually a very interesting story with the Yeshiva Zatzal, Rav Moshe Zecher Tzaddik V'Kadosh L'Vracha, where many years ago, at one point the Rabbeim in the yeshiva in MTJ came into the Yeshiva Zatzal, and they were complaining about their paychecks, about their wages, how much they were getting paid, and they used a lashon to the Yeshiva Zatzal, and they said, we're working lishma, we're doing this l'shem mitzvah, we're doing l'shem shamayim. The Yeshiva Zatzal said, whoa, hold it. You get a paycheck. If you're getting a paycheck, you can't come and you can't say, I'm doing it l'shem shamayim. It's a job. You're doing it, you're getting a paycheck. Now maybe it's true that you chose this profession because this is the profession that you want to be Isaac in. You'd rather be doing this than being a dentist. But okay, one person wants to be a dentist, one person wants to be a Rebbe, one person wants to be an auto mechanic, one person wants to be a sanitation man. Yeah, the people who hang on the back of the truck and pick up the garbage, a lot of them do it not because it's the only job they could get or because there are good benefits. They like it. I know this from personal experience. I knew a garbage man very well, and he told me, I love my career, not my job, my career. He literally hung off the back of the truck in Borough Park, picking up the garbage in Borough Park. I love my career. Happens to be he's a special person, but career. He did it because he wanted to do it. He did it because he loved it. So you're a Rebbe because you want to be a Rebbe. That's the profession that you chose. Don't come to me and say, I'm doing it l'shem shamayim. So when it comes to Isaac b'mitzvah, pater min mitzvah, Isaac b'mitzvah, pater min mitzvah is if you're not getting paid. If you're getting paid, you already don't have the p'tur of Oisik b'mitzvah potter min mitzvah. And the Aruch HaShulchan says, if you're telling me that that's the time of the p'tur, v'lo metzinu chilik zeh b'gemaru b'paiskim, then how come the Gemara, or at least the Paiskim, don't make the point of saying, hey, wait a minute, you can't say Oisik b'mitzvah potter min mitzvah if you're a nurse that's doing this for pay. We don't find that anybody makes that chiluk. So it would seem, says the Aruch HaShulchan, that the p'tur is not Oisik b'mitzvah potter min mitzvah. Va'oid, and furthermore, says the Aruch HaShulchan, Di'im etam Oisik b'mitzvah, if the p'tur is Oisik b'mitzvah potter min mitzvah, my time of the day rishona to paiteris oisam afilu shaloi b'shosh Oisik b'mitzvah. Our kasha, asks the Aruch HaShulchan. If the p'tur is Oisik b'mitzvah potter min mitzvah, so then why would the day rishona in the mechaber say that you're potter even when the chayla doesn't need you? When the chayla doesn't need you, you're not being Oisik b'mitzvah. So eat a different sandwich in the sukkah. Therefore, v'nira li, says the Aruch HaShulchan says, it appears to me that the p'tur is not Oisik b'mitzvah potter min mitzvah. Dezeu ha'kol b'chlal teishvu ke'ein taduru. The reason the mishamshim of the chayla are potter, says the Aruch HaShulchan, is not Oisik b'mitzvah potter min mitzvah. They're potter because of teishvu ke'ein taduru, like the chayla himself. The kishem sheha'adam shedirasai kashasa loy libriyusai yatsa midirasai. The same way somebody who's unwell leaves the sukkah if sitting in the sukkah is hard for him and going into the house is more comfortable. K'may kain b'sukkah, and that's why he's allowed to leave the sukkah, because he would leave his house. U'k'may sheb'shamshei ha'chayla oizvim beisvam v'yoshvim eitz al ha'chayla. When there's a chayla and the chayla needs attendance, the attendants don't say, come to my house and I'll tend to you in my house. The attendants leave their house and they go to where the chayla is. K'may kain b'sukkah. So then the same rule applies to sukkah. The same way you would leave your house to go tend to the needs of the chayla, you're also allowed to leave the sukkah to go tend to the needs of the chayla. Va'afilu oiske b'schar. Now, even if you're getting paid, you're also potter. Why? The loigriim yishomerei peiros the peturim. We're going to see later on that if there's a crop in the fields that has to be guarded, otherwise people are going to steal it, the watchmen are allowed to go out to the field and they're potter min hasukah, because that's where the job has to be done. And they would leave their house to go do the job of guarding the crop, so they're also allowed to leave the sukkah to go guard the crop. Same thing over here. You leave your house to go tend to the needs of a chayla, so you leave the sukkah also to go tend to the needs of the chayla, even if you're a paid nurse. You treat the sukkah the same way you treat your house. And that's why the first opinion holds. When somebody tends to the needs of a chayla, does he jump up the minute the chayla doesn't need them? No. They get the chayla from the chair, they get the chayla into the bed, and the chayla says, okay, thank you very much, now I'm comfortable. Does the guy jump up and leave the room? No. He sits down next to the bed, he schmoozes with the chayla, are you sure you're comfortable? Can I get you anything else? Da, da, da. So he says, kishem shederech hamishamshim she'ein oizvim miyadas ha'chayla lachish shimusham ela yoshvim etzlo yamasichim imay kederech b'nei adam ve'ein chayzrim miyad lebeisam. The nurse doesn't jump up the minute the chayla doesn't need him and run out. They stick around. K'may kein hu b'sukkah. You do the same thing in regards to sukkah. So you don't have to jump up even when the chayla doesn't need you. If it's your job to care for the chayla, you spend extra time with the chayla. Your mind is on the chayla. You're not mechuyev to jump up right away. That's the opinion of the day of Rishona. So since the p'tur is teishvu ke'ein taduru, so now I could treat the chayla in regard to the sukkah the same way I would treat the chayla in regard to my house. I'm not mechuyev to jump up the minute the chayla says he doesn't need me and run back to the sukkah. V'ayesh mi sha'omer sever, the yesh mi sha'omer holds, the mikamokim kishagam hashimushai, lamaisa, when the chayla doesn't need you, lama lo yikayim mitzvah sukkah. Why shouldn't you go be Mekayim the Sukkah? There's no reason not to. The Ein Zabachal Teshu came to Duru. So it's a little bit hard to pick out exactly the point of chiluk between the first opinion and the second opinion, but at least according to this, we get a little bit of an understanding of what the second opinion is. Okay, and here again, we saw two different explanations of the P'tur of the Mishamshim. Is the P'tur Teshu came to Duru, or is the P'tur one of Isaac b'mitzvah, Pater min ha-mitzvah? I did also see brought down, let me just find it here quickly. I saw brought down, yeah, they bring down from the Mishnah's Yavitz, they bring down that when the Mishnah Berurah says in Ois Katan Zayin that the Mishamshim are potter because of Isaac b'mitzvah, potter min ha-mitzvah, the Mishnah Yavitz doesn't mean that there's only a p'tur of Isaac b'mitzvah, potter min ha-mitzvah, but there's no p'tur of Teshu Kain to Duru. The Mishnah Berurah also meant that there's a p'tur of both. There's Teshu Kain to Duru and Isaac b'mitzvah, potter min ha-mitzvah. Now there's another nafkamina, whether the P'tur is Isaac b'mitzvah, Pater min ha-mitzvah, or the P'tur is Teshu Kain to Duru. And that is on the first night. If you remember, we learned that there are those that hold that the P'tur of Teshu Kain to Duru does not apply on the first night. There are those that learn that the chiyuv of the first night is based on the Gzera Shava Tezvav to the chiyuv of Matzah on the first night of Sukkah. And the geder of Teshu Kain to Duru doesn't apply on the first night. And that's why the first night of Sukkot, we eat in the Sukkah even when it's raining, because there's no p'tur of Teshu Kain to Duru. Yes, it's true you would leave your house if it was raining, but on the first night, there's no p'tur of Teshu Kain to Duru. That's the first night is Tezvav. You're mechuyev to eat in the Sukkah on the first night, no matter what. The same way you're mechuyev to eat matzah on the first night of Pesach, even if you're a mitzvah. The P'tur of Isaac b'mitzvah, Pater min ha-mitzvah, would apply even on the first night. So I'm giving you some background over here and some different nafkaminas. Okay, now let's go weiter. Says the Ramah, 4 lines down the middle of the line, right by the Ois Katan Yud Beis for the Mishnah Berurah. Says the Ramah, Umi shemakiz dam chayev b'sukkah. Somebody who engaged in bloodletting is chayev in sukkah. Let's remember that in the times of the Mishnah, the Gemara, possibly even in the times of the Rishonim, bloodletting is something that was done not just for refuah, it was considered preventative medicine. It was something that you did to remain healthy. You did bloodletting. The Ramah says bloodletting, after bloodletting, you don't have a p'tur. You're not a chayla that's potter from the sukkah. Ois Katan Yud Beis says the Mishnah Berurah, Hainu b'makis dam rak kedei lishmar habrius. This is talking about somebody who engaged in bloodletting as, like I said, preventive medicine. And he doesn't feel bad at all after he does the bloodletting. He's fine. Shaz ain't a mitzvah klal. He's not mitzvah. V'adarabah, quite the opposite. Husameach, he's happy. Umarbe ha'achila ushtia. He's even hungry and thirsty. He eats an extra meal. He drinks more after bloodletting. He builds himself back up. But he feels good. He's not mitzvah. That's why the Ramah says he's not potter. But if you're talking about somebody who was a chayla, or my high time a makiz, and he went to go be makiz dam to do bloodletting as a refuah, potter, then he's a chayla and he's potter. Says the Mishnah Berurah, somebody who takes a laxative, in misyare sheyazik leyatzina potter. Apparently there was some kind of worry that the cold might be bad for such a person, so then he's taka potter as a chayla, and I guess as a mitzvah. Okay, let's go to Siv Dali. Says the Mechaber, mitzvah potter min ha-sukkah. Somebody who's mitzvah, somebody who being in the sukkah is causing him tsar, he's potter. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Katan Yud Gimel, mitzvah potter. Again, the ke'ein to duru be'inon. because Teishvu Ke'ein Taduru. Va'af B'chal Hashana, all year round, Ein Adam Darba Makim Shu Mitztar. If for some reason the house that you're in is causing you tzar, you would leave the house. You're not going to stay in the house if you're Mitztar. But over here, the Mechaber makes a difference between the Mitztar and the Chayla. Over here, the Mechaber says Mitztar Potter Min HaSukkah, 3 lines off the bottom in the Shulchan Aruch. Who v'loy mishamshav, the person who's mitztar is potter. But if he wants to have servants with him, if he wants to have people with him who are attending to his needs, those people are not potter. Because by somebody who's well, it's not, there's no oisik b'mitzvah potter min ha-mitzvah. By the attendance of the ill person, we said there's a p'tur of oisik b'mitzvah potter min ha-mitzvah. Maybe there's a p'tur of teishvu ke'ein toduru. You would leave your house to tend to the needs of a sick person. But over here, we're not dealing with a sick person. We're dealing with a mitzvah. Somebody in the sukkah, he's hot. He's too hot. I'm not knocking the hot person. If Yitaka can't take it, so he can't take it. He's a mitzvah. He's potter min ha-sukkah. But he can't schlep his attendants with him out of the sukkah. You don't leave your house just to tend to somebody who's not comfortable. And the zikr not a mitzvah. There's no mitzvah potter min ha-mitzvah. So the Mechaber says, who v'loy mishamshav. Now the Mishnah Berurah is going to make an interesting exception to this rule. Ice cut in Yudal, it says the Mishnah Berurah, who v'loy mishamshav. If the attendants of the mitzvah want to eat a tuna fish sandwich or they want to go to sleep, they have to go into the sukkah. But, says the Mishnah Berurah, it seems to me, how about if he's a paid butler? This is his job that he's doing. So he leaves his house every day of the year to go to his job to be a butler for this person. And now this person wants to leave the sukkah and he wants to go in the house. So now I got to go do my job. I got to go into the house. Rashoy Gabayoim Lasais came. Then I could leave the sukkah. Teishu came to Duru. Again, this is like the watchman of the crop or of the orchard who leaves his house to go do his job. Hamavur lekaman b'simin zeh. So the Mishnah Berurah makes this very interesting chiluk. Interestingly enough, the Aruch HaShulchan doesn't like this chiluk. The Aruch HaShulchan says, "Ve'enai pater elahu ba'atzmai v'loy mishamshav." The mitzvah is pater, but his butler, his servants, they're not pater. Dein inyan l'mishamshim rak b'choyla shu murchrich she'yishamshu aisai. By an ill individual, fine, we give a p'tur for the mishamshim because they have to tend to the needs of the chayla. Aval adam abari ein mishamshav k'maisai. A healthy person, we don't give him his butler. Di'im lav kain, says Aruch HaShulchan, if it wasn't that way, imagine this scenario. Isha ashira, a wealthy woman. A woman is pater in sukkah. So misasei shazman grama, a woman doesn't have to eat in the sukkah. So you have a well-to-do woman. Sheyesh la harbe mishamshim. And she has a retinue of servants. Yiftaru kulam in sukkah. They should all be pater from sukkah. Mipnei shehi yosheves chutz l'sukkah v'hei mishamshim la. Because she's pater min sukkah. She's eating in the dining room, and they're her mishamshim. So they should all be pater min sukkah. The truth is, according to the Mishnah Berurah, if they're paid, it sounds like they are pater min sukkah. The Aruch HaShulchan says, what? We're not going to pater all of them from the mitzvah sukkah. V'achinami keinu ve'ein zed doimel l'shomerei peiros. The Aruch HaShulchan says, no, you can't compare this to shomerei peiros. The hasam behechrich l'shomram shelo yignuvu oisam. By the guard who's guarding the crop, he has no choice. He has to go out to the crop to guard the crop. That's where the crop is. And if you don't guard the crop is going to be stolen. So Teishu came to Duru. You would leave your house to do this. You leave the sukkah to do this. But people who are tending to the needs of a healthy person, this is a luxury on the part of the person who's mitzvah. There's no great need over here that we should go ahead and pater these people from the mitzvah sukkah. Aruch HaShulchan says a bitmia, a wonder, because of the needs of this pampered individual who happens not to be chayiv in sukkah, we're going to exempt all of these other people in sukkah. So here you see a difference between the Aruch HaShulchan, a difference opinion between the Aruch HaShulchan, it would seem, and the Mishnah Berurah. Okay. Let's go a little bit weiter here. The words of the Ramah, end of the line, 3 lines from the bottom. Avo b'layla harishayna afilu mitztar chayiv lechol sham kizayis. On the first night, there is no p'tur of mitztar. Remember, we eat in the sukkah even if it's pouring. There's no p'tur of mitztar. Says the Mishnah Berurah is cutting tezvav avo b'layla rishayna azal l'shitasai. This is the Ramal l'shitasai b'simin tafresh lamites sifhei b'hagah the sasam sham lahachmir, who rules stringently b'yardu gishamim when it's raining l'inyan laila rishayna when it comes to the first night. The Ramah paskins like the Shitas who hold that there is no p'tur of Teshu Kain to Duru on the first night. So there's no p'tur of Mitzvah on the first night. That's what he said in the context of rain, and that's what he says over here in the context of Mitzvah. V'hu adin kan. Avaladash shari paiskim the patri sham, but according to the other paiskim who hold that there is a p'tur of Teshu Kain to Duru on the first night, and therefore when it's raining you don't eat in the sukkah, who adin kan. So to over here they would hold that there's a p'tur of mitzvah even on the first night. Val Kain, therefore, yesh lehisnaig lamaisa aloch lamaisa, we should be noyeg b'mitzvah when it comes to a mitzvah on the first night, kemoy le'inyan yardu geshamim, the same way we act halacha lamaisa in the context of rain. In the context of rain, we said we eat in the sukkah on the first night even if it's pouring, like the sheet of the Ramah, but we don't make a leishev basukah because there are rishonim that hold that you're potter, so we don't make a leishev. So to a mitzvah on the first night, you got to eat in the sukkah anyway, but you can't make a leishev. U'kamoshe kesavnu sham b'Mishnah Berurah sif katan lamed hey ayin sham, and we're going to stop over here. 2 lines from the bottom in the middle of the line in the Mechaber, Ezehu Mitztar. Thank you so much for joining me for Liman HaTorah. The schos of Liman HaTorah should be Megan against Klal Yisrael. The Rebbeinu Shalom should send Yeshua's Refuah's Parnasa and Shidduchim to all those in need. And the Rebbeinu Shalom should have Rachmanis on Klal Yisrael. Like we keep on being mispal in the Slichas. The Rebbeinu Shalom should bring the Bias Gal Tzedek, the Meher of Yameinu. Amen. Be well.